This is Sporting Life.
Well, welcome along to the Sporting Life Racing Podcast. It's Chester Week. One of our panel is at Chester. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll spot who it is. It's Ed Chamberlain, and we're going to lose after 20 minutes because he's got to conduct the draw for the Chester Cup, the old brown envelopes and the hot balls for those who want to be in the low.
Channeling my inner Rod Stewart's the plan.
Yeah, we all know how this goes. We saw the Rugby League Cup final draw where they dropped one team, they still got called out. They were the great days. But Ed, you're freshest from 3 days at Newmarket. How did you find the Guineas Festival?
It was good, wasn't it? I tell you what's incredible here, a racecourse with good Wi-Fi. New Wi-Fi here at Chester, unbelievable scene. They've invested a load of money in it. It seems to work, which is great. Enjoyed Newmarket. I was lucky to miss Friday, Audie, which sounded horrendous in the weather. I don't know whether you were there, GC, but it sounded like a really miserable day. Then the sun came out on Saturday, and we got a Guineas that we'll have to wait and see how good a Guineas it is. I mean, the upside to it, DJ must be delighted. One, he tipped the winner of the 1,000 Guineas, and two, all-weather racing. We can't diss that anymore. I mean, that is the place to get ready for these big races now. We're going to see it at Chester this week. A load of horses today, and the big trials have come from the all-weather, so the theme is going to carry on. We'll have to wait and see how good a 2,000 Guineas it was, Audie, because they were walking at the end, weren't they? I mean, Notable Speech looked very good, but they were crawling. They'd gone quick. And I think I'm right in saying, you guys know more about this than me, the 1,000 Guineas was significantly quicker. The 1,000 Guineas is a race you just need to watch over and over again. I wish we'd had aerial footage like we'd had at Aintree, so you could see what happened to Jamie Spencer, how unlucky he was. But if you were like GC and on Ramatuel, oh my goodness me. On a potential non-stayer when they've gone really quick, and he went and did that. Yeah. And hats off to Christopher Head, Audie, because that could have been huge for him. He'd lost those horses, Big Rock and Co. Ramatuel's his big hope, and that happened. And he was very, very graceful afterwards. He must have been hurting big time, because that's one that got away. And it's left me looking forward to seeing the horse that beat both the two horses, Tamfana and Ramatuel, in the Imprudence. Romantic style for Godolphin must be very, very good moving forward. So two interesting Guineas that leave lots of question marks moving forward, Audie, which is good. That's what it's all about.
The great game continues to deliver. I'm trying to find that clip of the podcast in January where you lot were waffling on about some old boat in Ireland. I think I said that I think we've just seen the Guineas winner at Kempton, but I can't find it yet. I'll
Aidan O'Brien form, Billy. That Aidan O'Brien form. Dear me. We should have been worried.
There's no after timing from time figure gurus for Notable Speech. Graham North, in his What You Learn column, sweet on him after Kempton. And he went into that Guineas with a hefty number for a horse with his profile.
He did, yeah. And like you say, I think it's one of those that just should sort of showcase on what we can do now with sectional times, and how it just does help us to be better informed about what these horses that are quite difficult to get a handle on and what they can do. Because on bare form, having won just 3 races on the all-weather, Notable Speech didn't look like he'd done a great deal. But stepping up like he did, he took a big step forward on bare form, but it wasn't a surprise that he could do that based on the sectionals that he'd shown at Kempton. And I guess the key thing is it's a case of him showing his versatility. He'd been so good at Kempton in slowly run races, whereas here at Newmarket, he showed that he was able to do it in the same style, but off a fast run race. So, it's all systems go for him now for the other good mile races later in the season, and it's going to take a real good one to lower his colours.
GC, was that moment sort of 2 out where he loomed up on the outside on the bridle, and despite his inexperience, big crowd, wide expanse of ground, he then picked up and hit the line too. He looks excited.
He does. We'll come to the abject performance of the favourite in a minute, but no reason to believe that wasn't a genuine Group 1 performance from Notable Speech and Rosalian. I think Rosalian emerges from that Guineas with tons of credit, and I really hope, and I think we will see them meet again, probably at Royal Ascot. I think the whole weekend laid the table very nicely because both those classics were really well run. I think you can make cases for various horses being better on another day, and 1 or 2 perhaps not being quite so good on another day. But no, he looks a high quality miler with a really good turn of foot, and it is fascinating to see how Godolphin are back. They shouldn't sort of chuckle at other people's columnist misfortunes. That's the nature of the business. But there was a column in the Racing Post last year from Julian Muscat. Tough times for Charlie Appleby, and hints of Dubawi's waning influence suggest this might be more than just a blip. But that's only the second in, because Brough scotted the Sunday Times last week, and he might be right in the end. Why City of Troy could be the greatest racehorse of all time. So I don't miss being a columnist.
What a bullshitter, as he said himself on Saturday. What a bullshitter. Excuse my French.
But no, that's the good thing about the entire weekend, and no knock on those guys. If you're a columnist, you've got to put your head on the block. It does keep the fire burning for various scenarios for the rest of the season.
Now, Scoop, as Aidan O'Brien went into the debrief after City of Troy on Saturday, spoke to Ryan Moore, turned around, looked to the heavens. What did he see? You with a dictaphone. One of the first people to get to the great man. What was his reaction? What do you make of what's been said afterwards, re City of Troy?
Well, he was surprisingly unruffled by it all, I would say.
Been there before, Ben.
What's that?
It's been there before.
Well, exactly.
12 months ago.
Exactly, 12 months ago. And before that with Air Force Blue, he's used to these short price ones getting turned over in a Guineas, I guess, on when you compare it to all the success he's had as well. But yeah, he came out with the starting gates excuse, restless in the stalls. And you could sort of see that he wasn't convinced himself when he was saying it, and I'm not surprised that he's come out and sort of added meat on the bones with that in what he said in the following days, heart rate, etc., etc. I mean, the most damning stat that I've found with Aidan O'Brien this year is that 13 3-year-olds have been sent off odds on and 11 have lost. Ooh. Odds on favourites. And that to me tells you that they think they're ready, but they're not. And I think that's the most, startling thing about it. And I've seen a few things written about Aidan O'Brien's 3-year-olds. Are they a bad batch or are they just undercooked? And I think it's probably the latter, and we'll see that as in the coming weeks and months. But certainly at the moment, I don't think you'd be backing any 3-year-old of his first time out.
Really, it was interesting.
At a short price.
Aidan expanded on Nick Luck podcast on Monday about he feels he just had him too fresh, and that his heart rate was right up as the stalls opened and couldn't be sustained through the mile. There's obviously no physical issue that we're going to know of building into it. It's 12 months on. It's another hit and hope job for Epsom.
There's no physical issue that we'll be told about anyway, Artie, even if there was one. Yeah, look, there is perhaps a kernel of truth in what Aidan was saying, that maybe just the fact that he's such a good workhorse that they didn't work him hard enough at home. Maybe he left him a bit too fresh. But to be honest, Aidan has had so many good horses through his hands. You'd think at this stage of his career, he knows what he's doing with these 3-year-olds. I'd be very surprised if he left him short. So it was an abject performance, as GC said. Will he be able to bounce back? Who knows? He did it. He worked the Oracle with Augusta Rodan last year. I'm not so sure he'll be able to do it with City of Troy, but let's see. I mean, it's too early to judge him. But Scoop touched on a good point there. Same sort of thing. I was going through Aidan's 3-year-olds this year. He's only had 11 3-year-old winners all told in this season to date, and only 2 of them have been outside of maiden or handicap company. So perhaps they are undercooked, but it is still too early. This week is going to tell us a lot now with all these Derby trials, but maybe he just has an ordinary bunch of 3-year-olds. I mean, he seemed to have 2 or 3 very good 2-year-olds last year, and the rest of them seem to be much of a muchness. So I think at this stage, I'd be inclined to think that until I see a bit more evidence, that maybe his 3-year-olds just aren't a great bunch this year.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. And with Augusta Rodan and Luxembourg both blowing out, the Stars are not living up to the billing. They've put it on the poll. Did Aidan treat City of Troy too much like a god? Which even by Aidan's quotes is absolutely sensational. And I think there's some truth in that. And I think Aidan should, double down and treat him more like a god now and just kneel down outside his box every morning and say, please come back to form, please.
We need. I mean, Ed's being heckled now at Chester Racecourse.
Dave Stevens from Coral is on his way to Champagne.
Ed looks like he looks like some sort of angelic figure suspended in the clouds there, doesn't he?
It looks like a god, doesn't it? If this is City of the
something we've not seen at Chester for a while.
No,
The sun's
that's
come
great
out.
to see.
But
You said,
Ed, one of
a
your
meeting deserves some luck with the weather at GC. Finally, they've got it this week. Magic.
Good.
and Ed, one of the big things you've got, one of your big wish list is a Crackerjack Derby winner for ITV Racing. Do you hold any hope out that City of Troy is going to deliver you just that in about a month's time?
I did. I don't anymore. I mean, I think you had to be concerned going in. That stat from Scoop is incredible, really. The odds-on shots. I was just looking at his stats in this country of those horses he'd sent over. Those sighters were getting nowhere near, were they? But kept being told it's only April and so on and so forth. And then before the race order was just genuinely fascinating. I've since watched back Racing TV and Lydia's comments, which were equally good. When Francesca, you could see her surprised and how underwhelmed she was when she saw City of Troy.
Bang on.
Aidan talks about standing into him, and he's 16-1. It was really interesting stuff, and I wouldn't have a clue, but he didn't have much presence in the paddock. And why is he Derby favourite now? I just do not understand that. I really, really don't. Is he going to be an August Rodin, or what's the one that blew out a few years ago, Air Force Blue? It feels more like the latter than August Rodin took me at the minute. I couldn't go anywhere near him for the Derby, and it'd be great if he could come back. It'd be great, but at the moment, hard to see for me.
And I'm going to stick with you for a little bit now, because we're going to lose you at the end of this segment for the Chester Cup draw. Good luck getting the right horses. Scooby, give him that list of the ones you want in the low stalls.
Ed knows all the warm bars. Yeah,
We're in the loop. I'm doing it with Lisa Hancock, my boss at the Injured Jockeys Fund. She knows as well, Scoop. She knows what we need. She's in the loop.
The heated balls, that's the key. So, Aidan, that's Aidan where we are now going into the Derby trials. It's amazing how with the flick of a switch, things can change, and they often do, starting at Chester. He's got 2 runners in the Vars today, one in the Cheshire Oaks. A lot of money for the second string. I know you put it up, Scoop, in the Chester Vars. Are you going to be following? Is the microscope out to follow the O'Brien Chester runners to see if this is a 3-year-old crisis?
Definitely. My main concern now, Audie, I don't know when this will go out, but it's 11:15 now on Wednesday, and this airport stuff is causing chaos. Did you see the getting through passport control and so on? So I hope everyone's going to get here. There's a bit of concern about that at the minute, and we've already had a number of non-runners for a number of reasons. Some of them were drawn wide, it must be said. And if you want to move quick now, because textbook Chester, because there will be more non-runners on account of the ground. This sun's going to stay like this. You look at a horse like Arrest, who's in to run tomorrow. I'd be very, very surprised if some of these horses run. There's some value to be hounded in the next couple of days with horses that will take part. Your Deauville Legends, who will like the ground here, because it's drying up very quickly. So my slight concern already going into this, on paper it's looking great at them, and I'm just a little bit concerned about non-runners and whether all the Irish who make this meeting so special will actually get here. But the microscope on Aidan O'Brien very much on, and it's got to be a watching brief with these 3-year-olds, hasn't it, this week? Got to be, and this afternoon should be absolutely fascinating.
We were going to come to Chester with a full panel later on. Just before I let you go, give us a prediction for the week at Chester. Give us a Chamberlain nugget to sign off with and go and do your duty with the hot balls for the Chester Cup draw.
I think I'd be going for a fast ground horses later in the week. Wait for the draw for the Chester Cup, and then in you go. And I do think the Ormond tomorrow, these races could cut up. They really could. And I think I'd go for Deauville Legend in that race. And then it's down to Lingfield at the weekend. Those Derby, can't wait to see Danielle again, who bolted up at Wetherby. Those Derby and Oaks trials at Lingfield should be really good at the weekend. It's a real helter-skelter week, this isn't it? Then we go to York. I mean, it's madness, but brilliant madness, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Do you know what? The much vaunted Chester Wi-Fi there. It started so promisingly, didn't it? A little wobble there, but we got everything we needed from Ed. Ed, thank you so much.
Did you lose me?
No, your picture just went slow slightly. It's just, I'll have words. They'll upgrade it for next year, don't you worry. The power of the media. HWPA will be hot on the case. But best luck this week, Ed. We'll be following on from Chester and Lingfield. Billy, before we sign off with Newmarket and with City of Troy in particular, one of the indications, plenty of people think he hasn't trained on the physical appearance in the paddock, etc., etc. Had he been working like that, he wouldn't have been anywhere near Newmarket, would he, let alone 46 for the Classic?
No, absolutely not. And, the fact that he was the only one, and Aidan had said for a long time that he was the only one he was going to run in the Guineas, would suggest to me that all had been going okay with him at home. He'd clearly been doing fine. Like, they put out that video the week before about with Dean Gallagher and how well he worked and all that. So clearly they were happy with him at home. Maybe they just didn't do enough with him. But I think it was kind of ironic, Aidan's initial excuse. The 2-year-old that he told us last year never got tired, got very tired in the Guineas. So we'll have to see. But like Ed said, even looking at him, like last year, I didn't have him pegged as a Derby horse. I'm not sure a 1.5 miles is going to be his thing. Maybe they'll decide to do something different with him, but for the Derby, I'd be very sceptical about him for the moment.
It would seem like a really long, hard road back, were it not for the fact that he did it not once but twice.
Yeah.
The same horse last year. Gus blew out badly in the Guineas, won the Derby, blew out badly in the King George, won the Irish Champion Stakes. But Billy, let me just suggest this. I wonder if I think it might be set in stone, this plan, but if they think he's going all right and working well at home, I wonder if the Irish Guineas might not be worth considering as a means of trying to get him back on track. It would be 3 weeks between the English and Irish Guineas, and then it would only be a week to Epsom then, wouldn't it? So
it's a bit tight,
probably a non-starter, but it's just one of those. From a punting point of view, it really confuses you as regards getting stuck in, because you know you can do it. You know the way Hartem and Al-Yanabi ran to a certain extent. They didn't let his form down that badly. So it can be done, but it's alien to what we think of from classic horses, isn't it? To be so absolutely up and down, and I don't know, it's all a bit confusing.
I thought the interesting thing, it was typical O'Brien that all the quotes coming out of it, it's something that he'd done wrong in the way that he prepared the horse. There's absolutely nothing wrong in terms of what City of Troy brings to the table in terms of his quality.
And when Ed
touched on, to see if he can work out what he did wrong between now and Epsom.
And Francesca said something along the, he's not very big, is he? And Aidan said, it's amazing, I just stood into him and he's 16-1. He was amazed at the size of the horse that he sees every day of the week, as if he'd just grown in the stable. So you're right, the politics and the only an upside spin is magnificent, but we have to see through it, don't we?
Let's talk 1,000 guineas now. David Johnson, a winning tip at a big price.
Well done, DJ.
Well, hail DJ. Tremendous tip in Al Malka. You must have been confident throughout the contest.
Well, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those races where you're looking at it and you never want to admit that you were a little bit lucky, do you? But it's one of those races where I think if that race was run 4 or 5 times again, you'd probably get 3 or 4 different potential winners, wouldn't you? And I mean, fair credit to Varian for deciding, despite El Malka's inexperience, to run her in the race. And it did look for a long way as if that lack of experience might find her out. But the fact that they'd gone hard really did play to her strengths, and she was able to pull it out of the fire. I mean, in terms of the ratings, it doesn't look a strong 1,000 guineas by any stretch of the imagination. El Malka's updated rating is 112p, which would be on the lower end of the historic standards. And I think, you look at some of the beaten horses in there. Tamfana obviously caught the eye of quite a lot, and Ramatuel, who was sent for home too soon. So I think both connections of both those horses will look at the race, and they'll be hopeful of taking just as much forward, to future engagements as what connections of El Malka will, I think.
GC, let's touch on, don't want to take you back there, but I've got to do Ramatoué. Furlong and a half out all over the winner of the Guineas. Have you ever known a longer last half furlong watching events in recent times?
Listen, I'm conscious of the fact that I bagged a Japanese jockey last week, and I'm going to bag a French jockey this week. So I'm going to be accused of, just bagging the away team. But I'll do it. I couldn't believe my eyes to see him, hit the front fully 2 out and really kick for home and try to make it even more of a grind. And just in the round now, I think he's only had 5 rides in the UK or in La Metra. I think 3 of them are in Group 1s. any of us would have won on Big Rock in the QE2. The other one was Blue Rose Sen, when he tried to get up the inside of Ryan Moore in the Nassau Stakes. And Group 1s and classic races in particular, they are where the spotlight shines brightest for jockeys. And some jockeys really shine in those circumstances, and one or two melt. And he's melted twice, both at Goodwood and in the 1,000 Guineas. And Rob certainly, I think, has cost his connections at least one big race, perhaps two. And as Ed said, for Christopher Head, who's lost all those good horses, he's lost Blue Rose Sen and he's lost Big Rock to a trainer I don't know much about. This is the star of the show at the moment, and a classic's gone a begging, I think.
It's another race where it's really good to take a look at the sectionals on. And you know, they're there for everybody to see on the Racing TV website. But Ramatuelle, I think she was the 6th slowest of the top 6. You know, she was slowest over the last 2 furlongs and all the other 5. And you know, whether it was going too soon, potentially lack of stamina, or a combination, you know, it's there for all to see. She just didn't quite get home. Definitely not.
Ben, our colleague Matt Blocker, level-headed family man. I'd imagine he probably gets in trouble if he swears at home, but I think there might have been the odd muttering watching Tamana rattle home as well on Sunday.
Yeah, she was unlucky, Tamfana, wasn't she, in the way that it panned out? Obviously,
I'm not sure she was, you know.
Well, I think she was in the way that she had to wait for room, but
yeah,
I agree with you, GC, in the fact that obviously she was given such a cold ride by Jamie Spencer, and things panned out for her nicely in that regard, in the way that the race turned out. Obviously, the winner was Al Malka, was ridden from the last position by Sylvester de Souza, and she managed to win. But I just think it was the way that she had to wait for room and finish like a train. I wouldn't go as far as David Manoussier saying, you know, she's the best filly in Europe and she'll prove it, etc., etc. But I do think she's obviously one to follow as she steps up in trip.
Billy, talking of stepping up in trip, Ylang is our new Oaks favourite off the back of that run. I mean, she's shaped like she wants further. Time for Master 8, and I think 108. The bar's not that high heading into Epsom at the minute with the fillies.
Yeah, 110 is our new time farm rating, Dave. Look,
I do research, but I did it too early.
She ran a perfectly fine race, which I think adds further weight to the theory that the O'Brien 3-year-olds are you know, probably ready enough. They just mightn't be good enough. I mean, she didn't have any excuses on the day. I think the race was run to suit her. Strongly Run Mile definitely suits. She was coming home best of all, and you'd have to think, with the view to Epsom, that was a really good trial. Certainly she looks like one that will improve her step up and trip. But look, she was sent off 5-1 on the day, so they weren't expecting a great deal. She mustn't be working the house down at home. I think for a long time, Opera Singer was probably their preferred 1,000 Guineas filly, and she met with a setback in the spring, so maybe this was kind of plan B with Ylang. But they'll be delighted with her. She was beaten less than a length, and you can certainly see why she is now favourite for the Epsom Oaks. She should stay. Again, she's not the biggest filly in the world, but plenty of stamina in her pedigree, and the way she races would suggest that Epsom will be right up her street. So yeah, I can see why she's favourite for it.
Before we leave this, can I just mention winning jockey Sylvester de Souza, first classic at the age of 43. He blew it in Hong Kong. There's no question about it, and he blew a job that was incredibly lucrative. He was just about to break into the top 4, top 3 behind Purton and Moreira, and he was giving them plenty of trouble. And I think he's been through the mill, self-inflicted some of it. He looks older now. He looks 43, but he's so dynamic and he just makes things happen, that fella. And if you watch his ride, he's incredibly strong when he needs to be. Puts his whip down late. He senses, I think, before the spectators could sense that she was getting there. So first classic win at 43 for de Souza, and all going well, you know, he'll win a few more big races this season.
DJ, before we leave Newmarket, just a quick line on the Pretty Polly. Just get the confirming the names. Friendly Soul beat Kalpana. The pair 12 lengths clear of the third. French Oaks for the winner, but they look two interesting prospects for the season ahead.
Absolutely, yeah. You know, they finished miles clear of the rest, as you mentioned there, and they awarded Friendly Soul a time form rating of 113 and Kalpana a rating of 110. So that's, like we were just saying there, what Yulang's improved rating is to 110. they would both be bang on standard to be really interesting contenders for the Oaks, but Friendly Soul, well, neither of them are entered. Friendly Soul, Gosden's, I think, are very much more favouring the route to go to France with her. She's by Kingman, and I think we've seen it before. Gosden, he just doesn't seem to fancy running these Kingmans over 1.5 miles too much. So I think they're going to go to France. But Kalpana, she does have an entry over 1.5 miles in the Ribblesdale. I mean, on the back of this, they've got to be tempted to be thinking about supplementing her for the Oaks, I think, because she'd be a really interesting, genuine contender on the strength of this effort.
I was in the paddock prior to that race. They're two good, strong, sizable fillies. They should both go on with experience. That was a pretty good looking field, but they were the two who stood out.
As you say, I promise you're not just on this podcast to be our moaning voice about things. We're going to talk about the Kentucky Derby. Sorry, Scoop.
Just before we leave Newmarket,
of course.
Can I just ask the lads some permission to spend some podcast points on a Royal Ascot bet?
Royal Ascot.
Yes. It's a 40-1 shot for the King's Stand. Oh, it's now the King Charles III Stakes.
Yeah.
But it's Kurdos for Clive Cox. He ran a cracking race in the Palace House, and he just looks like he's improving with age, just like his sire, Profitable, who was trained by Clive Cox as well. And he went Palace House, Temple Stakes, King's Stand, and I think that's the route for this horse. He was a little bit outpaced in the Palace House, but he was running on when he was hampered, and he was beaten half a length in a blanket finish. But I think it was a massive step up on what he'd shown on his reappearance. I think he'll step up again at Haydock, and I don't think it's a strong field for this King's Stand. Big Ev's his favourite. I don't think the Aussies are coming over like they used to with their absolute superstars. And I think 40-1 might just be a good bit of business anti-post. So
1 point each way.
1 point each way, GC, if that's okay with the lads.
Also, well done with that Liberty Lane at the weekend. Thanks for all the messages, etc.
Thanks for dealing with them.
Scoop, can you just confirm the name of this actually? Because I was actually saluting His Majesty when you said it, and it might not have been crystal clear.
Kurdos for Clive Cox.
Okay, there you go. 40-1 each way, 1 point each way for the King's Stand.
Podcast points.
Podcast point, and they're the ones that matter. They're the most important points.
Thank you.
We're heading to Louisville, Kentucky Derby. Big weekend for Kenny McPeak. The Oaks double, only the 4 trainer to do it, but a controversial Kentucky Derby. What did you make of it?
I don't want to make a massive deal of this, but I think the Churchill stewards may have dropped the ball slightly. If you were watching the race, it was a dramatic race, a thrilling race. And the winner was the winner on merit, Mystic Dan. He sluiced up the inside. Caller Larry Colmus took his while to spot him, but that's by the by. But Sierra Leone, Chad Brown, and Forever Young Japanese Raider were having a right set to on the outside. And no question in my mind that Sierra Leone was the main offender. He definitely carried Forever Young off a true line. Ryosai Sakai, young Japanese jockey, didn't object because the culture is in Japan, apparently. The stewards will sort things out. They'll call the inquiry. They didn't. And I think they made a mistake because it was a nose and a nose. Forever Young definitely lost more than a nose by being carried across the track late on. And the stewards probably dodged a bullet because if Sierra Leone had won the race and they hadn't called an inquiry, it would have been a major, major story. As it is, fantastic result, run from that Japanese horse. They're getting there, Japan, in the Kentucky Derby, but this was a tough one because 2 noses for Forever Young.
There's a question, GC. Will they win the Kentucky Derby before they win the Arc?
Oh, yeah. It's a good question, actually. It's a great question. 10 to 11 each of 2, maximum stake 20 quid.
Have 22 on instead.
22 to win 20.
Easier to settle.
We're going to talk a bit of Punchestown in a little bit. A couple of bits of jockey news first. Adrian Heskin announced his retirement. Remember him on these shorts riding for Max McNeil, retained jockey. He's been riding in Ireland recently. Doesn't seem to have had that many opportunities of late. Were you surprised to see him quitting nonetheless?
Not particularly, I suppose. Like you said, once his retainer ended with Max McNeil, he came back to Ireland. And he's found it tough going, Dave. Let's make no bones about it this year. I think he only managed to ride 4 winners A handful of them were for Willie Mullins, but it's it's so difficult over here at the moment for freelance jockeys in particular. If you're not based with a yard, it's hard to get the good rides, and he was struggling to get good rides. But I mean, Adrian Heskin's had a great career. I remember watching Adrian Heskin as a 16-year-old riding at Limerick one day. He'd only had a handful of rides, and I thought, this is a guy that's going to go right to the top. He was so composed and so polished on a horse at that age. Of course, he went and became the youngest ever Cheltenham Festival winning rider. The following year, he won the cross country in A New Story, and then backed it up by winning the Bet 365 for Michael Horrigan on Church Island a couple of months later. So, look, he looked to me like a fellow that was going to go right to the top. The fact that he didn't is probably down to circumstances as much as anything else. He was just never in a position where he was, okay, he got to ride some very good horses, but maybe not some really top-class ones. I think he had that talent. It just didn't work for him. But look, he's only 32. He's very young. He's had a good career, and he has loads of time to have a second good career. So best wishes to him, and best of luck to him, whatever he decides to do.
And the gongs were handed out at Punchestown on Saturday for the various champions, and an awful lot of goodwill towards Jack Kennedy, champion jockey for the first time. How big an achievement? Huge
achievement, and you'd have to say thoroughly deserved one. He rode 123 winners, which is a massive total. But he had 563 rides, which is an enormous total, and it's by far and away the most of any jockey riding in Ireland during the National Hunt season. Darragh O'Keefe was the only other jockey to get over 500, and he only rode something like 502 or 503 rides. So, huge amount of rides. 123 winners is not to be sneezed at, and in fairness to Jack, he's been setting the pace all through the season. I think I certainly thought that when it came down to the business end, that Paul would probably ride more winners at Fairyhouse and Punchestown, and that would get him over the line. But having said that, Paul is after riding 121 himself, which is a big personal best for Paul. I think it's about 10 or 12 winners more than he's ever ridden in a season in Ireland in the past. So they've had a fantastic go at the two of them. Paul had a striker at 38%, which is ridiculous as a National Hunt jockey. And again, as we've mentioned on the podcast before, it came down to outside rides. Jack Kennedy rode 10 winners for other trainers, and Paul rode 0, and that's what pushed him over the line in the end. But the two of them are fantastic jockeys. They're great ambassadors for racing. It was a great battle they had, and it certainly added a little bit of extra spice to Punchestown. And hopefully the two of them will stay in one piece, and we might have another similar situation next year.
Imagine not being champion at 120 winners, 38% strike rate, and yet you're finishing second. Incredible.
Isn't that the thing, though? If he was really motivated to win the jockey's title, as opposed to maximise his chances of saving himself and being at his best for the Grade 1 races, Tannen would have won it. Like you say, he didn't take any outside rides. He hardly has that many rides in handicaps. If he'd have been really motivated to have won it, he'd have been miles clear before it even came to Fairyhouse and Punchestown, wouldn't he?
Yeah, it's not that he wasn't really motivated, and he did take outside rides. He just didn't get any outside winners. But I suppose even in the last couple of weeks, the fact that Willie was concentrating on the British Trainers Championship, like he did rock up in Perth one day where he could have been in Ireland riding over jumps in Ireland, and he didn't. There was a couple of away trips like that where Jack was at home trying to ride as many as he could, and Paul was I suppose towing the company line to an extent, trying to get Willie across the line in Britain. So yeah, maybe he could have, but at the same time, to ride, as Dave said, to ride 121 winners in Ireland and not be champion jockey is a fair achievement.
He does like focus on the Grade 1 horses, though, doesn't he? He does sort of save himself for them. Like even at the Cheltenham Festival, he didn't take a ride in the Fred Winter, did he, Paul Townend? So he's sort of sacrificing the potential festival winner to, keep himself sharp for the very best horses. And obviously, it's because of the stable he's attached to. But it is quite, fascinating, really. That he
can't double check this, but wasn't his only handicap ride of the week on Absurd in the county?
Yeah,
he did all right on that, didn't he?
Yeah,
but I would assume that's Willie's. That he's told to do that. I can't imagine that's Paul's decision himself. I would assume Willie tells him, and obviously he's stable jockey. It's such a powerful yard that he wants him available for the best horses in the best races. So I'd imagine that's my way of thinking, that Willie kind of dictates what rides he takes and when he takes them a lot of the time.
We should have spotted that, shouldn't we? Absurd. If that was his only handicap ride of the week on the last day, we sort of should have picked up on that. I don't want to leave this jockey issue without mentioning this poor young man, Michael Byrne, dead at 36. And if no cause of death is given in the Newsby issue, you sort of draw your own conclusions. So very, very sad. And there's something about that job for the guys who are, at the coal face that it can take quite a heavy toll. So obviously condolences to all his friends and family, but that was a real sad note at 36.
Absolutely. This is a segment DJ's looking forward to. It's going to be a quick Punchestown review. Scoop, last week I said Galopin de Champ or Fast or Slow. You said Galopin de Champ. What went wrong?
Yeah, you put me on the spot there, Dave, didn't you? Do you know what? I still think they could have won the race. He's a stayer, isn't he? And I just think he probably should have gone harder in the early stages and made it more of a test. And it's probably something to do with back end of the season, not wanting to flog a ×2 Cheltenham Gold Cup winner. But fair enough, Fast or Slow got the job done on the day in his specialist Punchestown where he seems to thrive.
I think with Galopin de Champ, Billy, you can tell by his jumping, can't you? And I know it can be the tactics that can dictate how he jumps, etc. But in that department, when he's good in the race, he's very good. And he wasn't very slick at his fences at all. He had taken an extra stride into 1 or 2 when Townend wasn't expecting it. He compared to the winner, there was just no fluency whatsoever.
Possibly just being taken out of his comfort zone, Dave, on quickish ground around Punchestown, which isn't a particularly stiff track. I think Paul set out to make it a good test, and I just don't think he could go fast enough on him. Fast or Slow went past him in an early stage, and I think he was probably just flat out for most of the way. In fairness to the horse, he ran a fine race. He stuck to his task and was closing again on the run in, but I just think 3 miles around Punchestown, when the ground is like that, is a little bit too short for him. I think even if the race had been run on Friday or Saturday, we were calling it good to soft on the Tuesday or Wednesday when the Gold Cup was. It was soft and possibly even a little softer than that come the end of the week. So I think if there had been a couple of days in the difference, we might have had certainly a closer finish. But I just think that the race was set up nicely for Fast or Slow. He was quite close to his best, like within 4 or 5 pounds in a time form rating. Galopin de Champ was about 12 below what we know he's capable of. So, a combination of all those factors, but still 2 cracking horses, and they're both young enough to give us a really good Gold Cup again next year, all going well.
Billy, where do you think Fast or Slow would have finished had he not lost this rider at the 16th at Cheltenham? It's a long way from home, but he was going well, and normally his jumping's a major asset, isn't it?
That is the $64,000 question, GC, isn't it?
Well, the proximity of Appreciate It and horses like that at Punchestown, it does peg the form, doesn't it?
It absolutely does, but we know from what he did last year and what he did in the early part of the season that he's well up there, Fast or Slow. I'd have been surprised if he wasn't placed, and possibly even second. I think he's at least as good a horse as Jerry Colomb. But look, we'll never know. Maybe we'll get to find out next year. But they're 3 really good horses again for next year.
And scooping an outstanding edition of Look on Sunday this week, Martin Brassel pointed out that Fast or Slow Kempton and the King George is on his radar. That's refreshing to hear. We've got all the glory of the flat season to come first. Don't get me wrong. I'm not counting the days down, but horses might be campaigned a little differently, which is always refreshing.
Don't wish the months away, Dave. Yeah,
you said that to me yesterday, didn't you?
I did say that to you yesterday. It'd be great to see Fast or Slow in the King George. He looks that type of horse, doesn't he? A proper 3-miler. And obviously another horse that ran at Punchestown last week would be good to see in the King George as well. Gaelic Warrior, who was probably just outpaced, wasn't he, last week on a bare 2 miles on a quick track on that sort of ground at Punchestown, and he won the Arkle thanks to his stamina in part, and I think his stamina could see him in a race like the King George as well. So it'd be great to see a couple of Irish raiders if they come over at Christmas.
I think there's an element of horses for courses with the Galopin de Champs and Fast or Slow, isn't it? And that's potentially something that you see in with regards why they're planning potentially something different with Fast or Slow next year. Obviously, they've had a few goes at Galopin de Champs around Leopardstown, and they've not really managed to lay much of a glove on him, whereas at Punchestown, it's a different thing. And if they go to Kempton, they've got a real crack at winning the King George, whereas you think if they take Galopin de Champs on at Leopardstown again, they're probably playing for second again.
Do you see, one of the good things about this jump season, which has had its knockers and its problem, it's setting the divisions up. There's new life coming into some of these divisions for next season, which hasn't necessarily been the case in recent years.
Well, there's no way that all those good novices will come and make their way through to be top quality open age chasers, but at least a couple will. So next year's big 3 mile chases could be tremendous. Spillans Tower, Factor File, I'm missing 2 or 3 that, it seems a very rich division. So no, there's a lot to look forward to. Now the jump season is coming to a close.
It's drawing to a close, and this is the last jumps chat for a while. Billy, quick line, State Man did what State Man does?
Absolutely, he did, yeah. I think Jack Kennedy probably set out wanting to make it more of a test than at Cheltenham, but it didn't really work for him, because if you look at the sectional times, they didn't really go very fast in the champion hurdle. It looked a steadily enough run race. And again, I think Irish Point maybe just couldn't go fast enough. He's essentially a stayer that's running at that trip, and he's just not good enough to beat State Man over 2 miles. But State Man, what a horse. 10 grade ones. He's won all 4 of the 2 mile grade ones in Ireland for 2 years in a row, and I can't find any horse, including the likes of Hurricane Fly and Isterbrack, that managed to achieve that feat. So he probably won't get the credit he deserves, but he's run, I was just looking at his record this morning, 9 out of the last 10 times he's run in Ireland, he has run to a time form rating of 160 plus, remarkably consistent, a smashing horse, and everybody would love to have anything to do with something like State Man. And he's certainly we don't know what's going to happen with Constitution Hill, but he's definitely the one to beat in Ireland again next year, Lossiemouth or no Lossiemouth.
You see Chris Cook's piece from the Racing Post today. It was about wrapping up the jump season from the Mullins angle. I think it's combined, Britain and Ireland, 10 million sterling, 10.9 million euro, I think. Absolutely amazing. And he illustrated the gap that's opening between what Mullins achieves and what whoever the 10th person in the trainers list is. And it's quite eye-watering to see the slice of the cake that the Mullins trawler is hoovering up. And State Man on his own won more prize money this season than the 10th most successful jumps trainer in Ireland. It's a lot of the stats around the Mullins operation are impressive, but they're also a bit scary in some ways, aren't they?
Winning most trainer in Ireland of all time now, Dave. He broke that record last week as well. He 257 winners over jumps in Ireland the last jump season, which is phenomenal. It seems every day he goes out and breaks a new record. He's already had 2 winners this jump season. He's only had 3 runners. So there you go.
He's got 3-year-old maiden entered up on the flat as well this week, hasn't he?
Well, that's the next thing. There must be half a dozen really smart horses who are ready to do some damage on the flat this year.
And it's the way he's thinking about which horses might switch to the flat, isn't it? We know Vauban and Absurd will be there, but I mean, Mystical Power, Daddy Longlegs, they're all getting potential Ascot dates when he was thinking out loud post Punchestown. Ben Linfoot, last question of the 23-24 jump season goes to Ben Linfoot. State Man or Lossiemouth, which one's Willie Mullins' best chance of winning the champion hurdle next year?
Oh, she's probably got half a stone to find with State Man, including the sex allowance. I would imagine the bookies have Lossiemouth a little bit shorter for the champion hurdle. And with her potential, she'll be 6 next season, he'll be 8. I'll go with the filly, the mare.
10 to 11, each of 2 for me. Yeah.
Any chance they'll meet before Cheltenham, you reckon, or will they be kept apart before then?
I think they'll be kept apart, and I think there's a distinct chance that Lossiemouth, given connections, could come over to Britain once or twice. Yeah, which would at least spruce up what's undoubtedly
they might,
the dullest division over here that we've had for some time. Nothing dull about Chester. There is never anything dull about Chester. Wonderful 3 days coming up on the Rudy. Billy, I'll just start with you. What sort of battalion is this O'Brien one he's running in the trials? Is there anything that you've got high hopes for?
It's kind of like the horse he's been running in trials up to now, Dave. It seems to be testing the waters again a little bit with these horses. He's got a couple of nice ones, but they all have a little bit to prove. Grosvenor Square today is, he was a listed winner last year. That form looks reasonably solid, if not spectacular. But the other horse in the race, Agenda, was an impressive winner of a maiden that looks quite strong. So they're interesting. Capulet left his, bit disappointed with him on the all-weather at Chelmsford for the last day. So he's got a little bit to prove. But I do like the fillies that he runs I do like the Irish fillies, I should say, that run in the Cheshire Oaks. But I particularly like the Joseph O'Brien filly, Galileo Dame. I was quite impressed with her. and I think she might take a bit of beating there.
Ben, you made the case for the O'Brien second string in the Vase in your on fire tipping column on Sporting Life. What is it about him that appeals to you?
Well, it was basically the fact that the favourite hadn't had a run this season, and we went through that earlier. And I was impressed with Agenda when he ran at Dundalk. Like Billy said, the third to come out and won a maiden at Gowran, and he just looked underestimated to me by the market. So no surprise that he's been well backed. And it was as simple as that, really.
It doesn't need to be complicated. And David, it's not complicated with Hidden Law. I think they put him in. I think he was a second entry in the Derby, the second acceptance day following his win at Newbury. So potentially a big day for him.
Absolutely, yeah. And as we know, Southall is now a breeding ground for potential classic winners these days. And he found 1-2 good on his debut there, but made no mistakes at Newbury next time. And it looks like a really good performance. You know, you couldn't have expected him to do any more than what he did. The time figure wasn't great. That was in part because they've sort of dawdled around. But, you know, he's still done well to put 5.5 lengths clear of the rest. And obviously, they've already got a really interesting one at the head of the bet in Arabian Crown. There's Ancient Wisdom still knocking around somewhere that is apparently, I think William Butte was saying on Nick Luck Daily the other day that he might go to the Irish Guineas or the Dante. So we'll have to see what the plan with that one is. But Hidden Law is well on the Derby trail himself at the moment.
GC, what's exciting you about Chester this year?
Well, I'm going to go tomorrow, I think. I'm quite looking forward to what looks a pretty good D stakes, 1.25 miles. And he's got a penalty which is slightly off-putting, but that horse of Brian Means, who won the Fielden Stakes so impressively, Jaribi or J, I don't know how you pronounce his name, but the penalty is a little bit off-putting. Richard Hughes runs a really well-regarded horse. Not sure about Capulet for Aidan. He's just looked a bit doer and a bit one pace, so I think they'll have to go forward to make the most of his stamina. But without the penalty, I would have been keen on the Brian Mean horse, Jaribi. But the penalty is just slightly putting me off.
Scoop, you're not a one-hit wonder when it comes to Chester. There must be an Andrew Baldwin handicap project on the radar somewhere.
There is actually.
Yes.
Well, you look at the stats, it says everything. Andrew Baldwin is the best trainer of Chester handicappers at the May meeting by an absolute landslide. He's got a strike rate of 20% in Chester handicaps at the May meeting from a load of runners. It's absolutely staggering. And so you've absolutely got to look out for his handicappers. And there's one on Thursday in the Halliwell Jones handicap at 2.35. Now, Sir Michael Stout's going to have a really short price favourite here in Never So Brave, who ran behind Ancient Wisdom and Van Dijk last season and has a mark of 94. He was beaten a length by, I think, both of those horses. So he's going to be a 6-4 chance or something. But I like this Celtic Warrior each way against him for Andrew Baldwin, a son of Saxon Warrior. He ran 3 times in a month last season. You know the score there, getting a handicap mark quickly. And he came out and ran at Southall in March and should have won a handicap off a mark of 75. He was unlucky, beating ahead in a photo. Subsequently come out and won a maiden at Kempton. He's gone up a few pounds, but he's improving with every run. And he'll be a good each way bet against this Sir Michael Stout good thing in the 2.35 on Thursday, Celtic Warrior.
Okay, I knew you'd have one for us there, Scoop. Is there anything on your Chester Cup radar at all, Scoop? Was it too early at this stage?
Too early, Dave. Eddie Chamberlain currently doing the draw, so we'll wait and see how that pans out.
Well, after hail the success of the Wi-Fi and phones straight afterwards, I hope it's gone better than the communications there. DJ, anything else on your Chester radar this week, or Lingfield indeed? We've got 2 significant trials coming up there.
There's an interesting Chester handicap. I thought Boardman was going to be interesting, but he's drawn in stall 10, so that might make things a little bit more difficult for him. So I'm going to switch my allegiances to Dancing Magic in the same race, who has fared a fair bit better with the draw. He's managed to land stall 3. He spent most of his career over a fair bit further than the 7.5 furlongs that he runs over. But I was really taken with how he shaped in what looks a pretty warm handicap at Newbury last time. It was that Spring Cup that was won by Metal Merchant. Dancing Magic, he's gone through the race really strongly, just hasn't quite seen it out. Whether it's stamina or needing the run or a combination, I think dropping back to 7.5 furlongs, going round a bend at Chester, will play very much to Dancing Magic's strength. And Roger Teal's gone to the trouble of booking William Buick, which probably going to take a couple of points off his SP, but he certainly won't be wanting for assistance in the saddle, will he?
JC, when it comes to punting at Chester, is the draw a huge factor for you? Does a red pen come out and say anything over a certain number?
No, I try to keep it simple nowadays. I spent too long trying to buck the draw trend Chester, going home with less money than I started with. So I like speed and low draws, and people would say, and rightly, yeah, but that's all factored into the price, but I'm still not sure it's factored in quite strongly enough. That Celtic Warrior's drawn 2, Ben.
Yeah,
you'll be pleased to know. So he should get the saloon passage from there. No, so it's as Ed said before he went off to do the draw. It's a hectic time of year, highly informative, and if you think you've got a good horse, it's time for them to put their hands up and do well in the trials now.
Yeah, that's the kids. We've got York to look forward to next week. We'll be previewing the Dancer meeting when we gather next Wednesday. But before then, Billy, we've got the Derby trial at Leopardstown, a good card there. We saw Whistle Jacket win at the Curragh
good horse
on Monday. Things are beginning to bubble away nicely. Anything on your radar for the weekend?
Things are starting to bubble away nicely, yeah. GC touched on Whistle Jacket, really impressive performance. Dropped to 5 furlongs, like Little Big Bear, his brother he got beaten at 6, dropped him back to 5, and this fella looked really sharp at the Curragh. So Little Big Bear went and won the Windsor Castle. I'd imagine they'll be flying a little bit higher with this fella, Norfolk or Coventry. Definitely the performance he put up at the weekend or at the other day would certainly suggest he's up to that level. This weekend should be very informative in Ireland. There's plenty of racing. Like you said, the Derby trial used to be known as the Derdenstown Derby trial. It's now the Cashel Palace Hotel.
And what a splendid hotel that is, Billy. If anyone from the Cashel Palace is listening in, you know what to do.
Yeah,
what a splendid hostelry that is.
But I suppose the interesting one there,
guys, isn't it? The Cashel.
It is, yeah. There's a tie up there, shall we say?
We couldn't afford to stay there, could we? It wasn't an agency. But sorry, Bill, continue with that.
Through the system, would it? Unfortunately.
Yeah.
But Coolmore will be hoping to win this race. They've got a couple of interesting ones. The most interesting one is Los Angeles, who of course was a Group 1 winner in France at the back end of last year. Like we were saying, Aidan's got plenty of bullets to fire this year this week with his 3-year-olds. He's going to send a couple to, looks like Illinois in the Euphrates. Will go to Limerick or to Lingfield for the Derby trial there on Saturday. They finished 2nd and 3rd in the Ballysack, so it'll put that form to the test. But hopefully he'll know a bit more, or we'll know a bit more about how good his 3-year-olds are come the end of the week.
Great stuff. That is us done. Next week in an exciting new segment of the show, we'll probably be testing the Wi-Fi at York. It's going to be a showdown at the big Wi-Fi's of the racecourses in England over the next few months. So, William, if you could just crank it up just to make sure that we beat Chester, that would be much appreciated. But no, we'll be looking ahead to what is always a fantastic 3 days on the Days Mine. Looking back on what happened at Chester and Lingfield, a brilliant time of the racing season. So much to look forward to. Thanks to Ben, to GC, to David and Billy, and best of luck with your own bets over the coming days.
Download the Sporting Life app for the best racing coverage, including live racing blogs, fast results, stable tours, trainer and jockey interviews, expert opinion and tips.